Hi Parker Panthers! The last time I was reading, we finished up with reading chapter 5. We met a new character. I think his name is pronounced Madog, that's how I say it. And we learned that he's not quite human. He's something called a traveler. We know that he's magical because the locket on Molly's chain that she wears around her neck, which was supposed to be for her brother Thomas, well, we learned that that repels beings with magic. Okay, so changelings, kind folk, and now our traveler Madog. We know that it can really hurt them. And so that's kind of a good thing because Molly can use it for protection against any kind of magical folk if they're trying to mess with her. So we're just going to go straight into chapter 6. I woke to a gray mist that hid everything more than a few feet beyond the mist of my nose. The fire had gone out and my clothes were wet and cold, and so was I. All around me water dripped and dropped from trees, plink, plunk, plink. The smell of mold and damp earth and moss hung in the air. Guests huddled by the fire's ashes, as cold and wet as I was, snuffling in his sleep like a sick calf. Madog, I called. Madog, where are you? My voice rang in the mist, but Madog didn't answer. Guest sat up and looked at me. Madog gone. Gone? Gone where? Gone, he said. Gone. Madog gone. Maybe he's just hunting rabbits for breakfast. No! Madog gone! 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 Guest's voice rose to a shriek. I seized his narrow shoulders and peered into his yellow eyes, searching for a different answer. What will we do without Madog to help us? How will we eat? How will we know which way to go? Guest pointed to my sack. Food! I sighed in frustration but kept my temper. We ate everything last night. Food! Guest pushed himself up on his spindly bow legs and toddled toward the sack. He tried to lift it, but it was too heavy. I ran to help him. Bread, cheese, jugs of milk and water, apples, walnuts, and dry meat tumbled out of the sack. Did Madog leave this for us? For me. He paused and gave me a squint-eye grin. And you. I doled out portions for us and tied the rest up in a sack. We have to make this last, I told Guest. If we gobble it all up now, we'll be very hungry when it's gone. Guest patted his belly. Hungry now. What did I just tell you? We have to make it last. Madog bring more, Guest said. Did he tell you that? He shrugged. No, yes. I fought an urge to shake an answer out of him. Which is it? Yes or no? Guest shrugged again. Maybe. Is that what you mean? Maybe, maybe, maybe. I tried another question. Did Madog tell you which way we should go to find your people? Guest pointed to the path. With a sigh, I prepared to hoist Guest onto my back, but he pulled away from me. I walk. I knew he'd not walk far, not on those bandy little legs, but the more he walked, the less I had to carry. Without Guest on my back, I put the sack into the sling and we set off into the fog. Warm, moist air clung to me. Clouds of midges circled our heads. Whenever we stopped to rest, the midges doubled and tripled in number and forced us to keep moving. Guest began to slow down and lag behind. When he tottered and almost fell, I hoisted him into the sling along with the sack of food. With his weight on my back and his smell in my nose, I breathed the changeling in with every step I took. For fear of stumbling, I didn't dare raise my eyes above the ground under my feet. Sometime after noon, I found myself high above a mist-filled valley. Willing my legs not to tremble, I steadied myself against a rock wall and tried to breathe normally. Just ahead, a waterfall poured in separate streams over a tall, dark rock face. It seemed to fall from the sky itself and crash to the earth far below. The noise of the water woke Guest, and he moved about in the sling. Shh! Be still, I cried. You'll make me trip and we'll go over the edge. No trip, no. For once, Guess did what I asked and stayed as still as our sack of food. Slowly, I made my way downhill. I did not look at the edge of the cliff. I did not look at the waterfall. I looked at nothing but my feet and the rocks and roots on the path. At the bottom of the hill, I loosened the sling and Guess slid to the ground. The fog turned into a cold, hard rain. Guess began to whimper. Cold, wet, hungry. Off to the left was a large, dark lake. At one end, the waterfall turned its surface to foam. To the right, rocks thrust up through tall grass like giant fingers reaching for the sky. We'll shelter here, I said. As I spoke, thunder boomed and lightning dove from the clouds, splitting into dozens of forks. At the same moment, the wind rose and drove icy needles of rain into our faces. With Guess behind me, I plunged into the tall grass and made my way toward the 3 tall rocks huddled together like old men. Squeezing through the narrow opening between the 2 of them, we tumbled into a small sheltered place. Grass had grown on top of the rocks, forming a roof of sorts, and the earth was mossy and dry. In the dim light, I saw piles of leaves and dry branches that must have blown in long ago. Gathering some of them, I took out the flint Madog had left in the sack of food. I had some experience lighting a fire, but it took a long time to coax the flames big enough to warm us. I laid our blanket out to dry and took food from the sack. Carrots, apples, cheese, and dried meat made a decent meal for the 2 of us. By the time we'd eaten, our clothes were almost dry. Guess dozed where he sat. Doze means sleep. His head nodding on his spindly neck like a flower too heavy for its stalk. He was a sad sight, but I had no pity for him. It was his fault we were here, cold and miserable. His fault I was lying on the hard ground with rain dripping in my face. His fault Thomas was gone. With my mind full of wicked thoughts, I glared at Guess back. There he lay, the cause of everything wrong in my life, sleeping peacefully while I lay awake. I could barely wait to be rid of him. Pulling my blanket over me, I listened to the rain pound the rocks. Wind howled in every crack and did its best to blow out the fire. Thunder crashed and banged and boomed. Beneath the racket of the storm, I became aware of a faint sound. I sat up and listened closely. Somewhere, a horse whinnied. As it came closer, I heard its hooves strike the earth. Guess stirred in his sleep and sat up, half awake but clearly frightened. What's that noise? A horse, I told him. What's it doing here in the middle of the night? Guess turned his head from side to side, listening hard. Leaping streams of stars, he flew higher and higher. What? Hold on. Okay, sorry. Skipped a page. He sniffed and tensed like a hunting dog who caught the scent of something. Not horse. Of course it's a horse. Hear it whinny? Hear its hooves? Guess dove under his blanket. Hide! Something's wrong. What do you mean? He was beginning to scare me. Hide, Molly! A bad thing out there! Now I was scared too, but just as I pulled my blanket over my head, I heard Madog calling my name. I tossed off the blanket and jumped up. It's Madog! He's back! In a muffled voice, Guess said, No, not Madog. It is Madog. You must be even stupider than I thought. Madog called again. Come to me, Molly. Guess reached out from under the blanket and grabbed my skirt. Not Madog. Stay here. Let me go, you mooncalf. I pulled away and ran to the opening in the rocks. Madog's voice sang in my ears. Molly, 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 come to me, Molly. The words twisted around me like a spell and drew me outside. And there was Madog, sitting high on the back of the biggest and most beautiful black horse I'd ever seen. His head seemed to touch the sky, his mane hid the hills. Leaving Guess wailing, I ran to Madog as lightly as if I were flying. The horse bowed to me. His breath was warm and sweet with the fragrance of fresh-cut grass. "Climb up," Madog said. "Climb up and travel with me to my kingdom across the silver sea." I sat on the horse's broad back, and he rose to his feet and began to gallop away from the stones where I left guest. I turned to smile at Madog, but he wasn't sitting behind me as I thought. "Madog?" I cried. "Where are you?" But the horse paid me no heed. He galloped with such speed, the world blurred and I couldn't see the rocks or the lake. "Put me down!" I screamed. "Stop!" The horse ran faster and faster yet. It was as if we'd left the ground and were riding up into the sky. The horse ripped the rain apart like a curtain and climbed cloud mountains. Leaping streams of stars, he flew higher and higher until I thought we'd land on the moon. Terrified of falling, I clung to his mane. "Where are you taking me?" His whinny sounded like a laugh. "You chose to answer my call, Molly. You chose to ride with me. You are mine now." What sort of horse talks? What are you, truly? "You should know what I am." "Take me back to Earth," I cried. "Please, I beg you. I'm afraid." Onward we went, in and out of clouds, our path lit with lightning, my ears deaf from thunder. I held his mane so tightly my fingers ached. "Please," I sobbed. "Please." "Are you certain you wish me to take you back?" "Yes, yes." "You will have your wish, Molly." Down from the stars he flew. Beneath me I saw the lake's black water, its surface laced with silver riffles. At first the lake was no bigger than a rain puddle, but as we plunged toward it, it grew larger, and I understood that the horse meant to dive into the lake and drown me. I lunged to one side, but the black threads of his mane wrapped themselves around me and held me fast. Into the water we plunged, going so deep I thought I'd never see the sky again. As I struggled to escape, I felt the locket press against my skin. I didn't know if such a small thing would work against a mighty stallion. Whoops. But I felt dizzy, lightheaded, as if I were half dead already. Pulling it from my dress, I used all my strength to push the silver heart against the horse's neck. With a shudder, the stallion threw me from his back. Freeing myself from his mane, I struggled to escape his thrashing hooves. The water was dark and murky. Reeds and grasses wrapped themselves around my legs. I wasn't sure what direction I was going, up to the surface or down to the bottom. With the last of my strength, I burst out of the water. Rain struck my face. I coughed and choked. The lake rose and fell in waves, but I saw the shore only a few feet away. All I knew about swimming was to kick my feet and paddle with my hands, but I managed to crawl out of the water. I lay still for a moment, gulping mouthfuls of air. I didn't dare stay where I was for fear the stallion might come after me. I staggered away from the lake, but I didn't get very far before the stallion splashed out of the water behind me. I didn't know which way to go, so I ran straight ahead faster than I'd ever run before. The stallion whinnied and his hooves pounded the ground. He was gaining on me, close enough for me to smell the lake water clinging to him. I saw the rock shelter ahead, but I knew the stallion would catch me long before I reached it. Changing direction, I headed toward a grove of small wind-twisted trees, thinking to hide in their tangled branches. Behind me, the stallion snorted. He was so close now, I felt his breath on my neck. Just as I neared the grove, Madog stepped out from behind a tree and faced the stallion. Speechless with fear, I hid behind Madog. He was all that stood between me and the horse. In range, the stallion reared up on his hind legs and threatened Madog with his hooves. "Step aside," he cried. "The girl is mine." I cowered behind Madog and stared into the horse's face. Mighty he was, and beautiful, and fearsome enough to take my breath away. What chance did either Madog or I have against something so powerful? Instead of surrendering, Madog held out his hand, his palm facing the horse. "What do you want from this girl, my friend?" The horse tossed his head and whinnied. His mane flew about him like a ragged black cloud. And then, though I scarce believed what I saw, The horse changed to a man, as beautiful and wild as the horse. Power seemed to light him from within. Medog, I've had dealings with you. His voice was like the storm, thunderous and deep, and I drew closer to Medog, more afraid of the man, if he was a man, than I've been of the horse. Medog bent his knee. Yes, we traded horses long ago when I was a green lad. No sooner had you left with 2 of my best stallions than the mare you gave me turned into a spindle-legged pony, worth nothing. Spindle-legged pony, worth nothing. The man left. Ah, yes, those horses were a fine bargain, I must say. Medog did not laugh. Let's save our reminiscing for another time. Now I ask, why do you waste your time on this mortal? There are some who do not wish this girl to enter their land. She does not belong there, and she brings contamination with her. The man shrugged. I was asked to stop her. Then why haven't you? Another shrug. I imagined her to be a worthy foe, but now I see she's a child, a puny thing. Let someone of less stature deal with her. She's no risk to me. Without another word, the man became a mighty horse once more. Wheeling about, he galloped away. I watched the stallion vanish into the darkness, unsure of what I'd seen. A horse who took me up to the stars and then down to the bottom of the lake. A horse who changed into a man and then back into a horse. How could such a thing be? In confusion, I turned to Medog and asked, how did you know to come? I have my ways, he said. Were you close by? I was far away tending to business. I had bargains to make and promises to keep or break. Then, how? Without answering my question, he said, but look at you, wet and cold and shaking so hard you can barely stand. You need the warmth of a fire. Lifting me onto his back, he began walking toward the rock shelter. Mind you, I cannot come running to rescue foolish girls every time they do something reckless. I'm sorry, Medog, but how could I hide in the rocks when you sat on his back and called to me? He shook his head. Oh, Molly, surely you've heard tales of the Pookas who live in the dark lakes and take lasses like you. Yes, but I'd never seen one, had I? Nor did I think they existed in the real world. Well now, you know that Pookas are real. Maybe not in Lower Hexham, but here in Mirkwood and beyond. He paused a moment as if to give me time to think about what he said. I hope you've also learned what the kind folk will do to stop you from entering the dark lands. I pulled the locket from under my dress. I saved myself with this. I'll do the same with to the kind folk. Do not count on that locket too much. You took the Pooka by surprise, that's all. It was I who saved you from being trampled under his hooves, and not a word of thanks have I heard from you. Oh, Medog, I do thank you. I promise I'll never be so foolish again. You must not trust anyone, man, woman, or child. In this land, things are not always what they seem to be. Okay, so that was the end of chapter 6. The next one will be chapter 7. I want to encourage you to keep going into Clever if you have technology to do that, to visit BrainPop, Mayan, Schoology, what else? Did I offer anything else? Oh, and Flipgrid. Those are all places where I put lessons. Of course, continue to watch the videos, and I miss you guys a lot. Everybody, I get to talk with other teachers in meetings on Zoom, and we're all feeling the same way. We're missing you guys a lot, and I know you're missing school, even though some of you might not want to admit it. So hopefully the time will pass by quickly until we see each other again. All right, so I'll tune in tomorrow with you guys so you can hear chapter 7. Bye-bye.